Hi, this is the voice of Heidie Calero with another economic capsule on the Puerto Rico economy. And this time we have entitled, Is There Another Banking Crisis? It seems like deja vu with all these events happening after Silicon Valley Bank in California, and the run on that bank, and the FDIC intervened, the Federal Reserve intervened with that bank, and President Biden immediately tried to arrest any run on additional regional banks, and saying, look, all the deposits are going to be guaranteed, even if they are surpassing $250,000, which I don't know if that could be said for all banks, but at least for these two banks, SVP and the other one, the Signature Bank, which is more on cryptocurrency, which is something that is really not well understood. It's based on algorithms and all that stuff. At any rate, it's those two banks that have been going under. And I want to share with you what happened in 2007, 2008, when it was the onset of the banking crisis and the Great Recession. And this graph illustrates on the left-hand side the number of bank failures that occurred, especially starting in 2007, going on through even 2012. At the peak in 2008, we had 140 bank failures, and then followed by 157 in 2010, and even in 2011, 92, in 2012, even 51 bank failures. So this is not just a one-shot deal. It was not. It was like a domino effect that continued to occur not only in the US, but it was global. So it did require a lot of bailouts and a lot of cohesiveness in terms of that regulation. As a result of that, we had Dodd-Frank's regulations that said that any bank 50 billion and up in assets would have to comply with all these very stringent regulations, capital adequacy, the stress test, the plans in terms of interest rates. Well, unfortunately, in 2017-18, President Trump deregulated, or at least Congress, with the aid, it was bipartisan, let me remind you, deregulated that and raised the bar, that instead of being from 50 billion, it was going to be from $250 billion in assets. So a bank like Silicon Valley or even Signature, which is under the $50 billion, really was not under the same regulations. And we have what we are seeing here in the next graph, which depicts all these bars, the biggest failures in the US banking failures. Washington Mutual, which was in 2008 with $307 billion in assets, followed by the next two, which occurred this year in March of 2023. That's Silicon Valley Bank with $209 billion, and Signature with 110 billion in assets. So it's still a lot of money that has been lost with all these biggest failures in the US. Going forward, in terms of market reactions, what has been happening in these next two graphs? We are depicting on the left-hand side what happened with the Dow Jones, which is the magenta line, the S&P, which is the green line, and then the NASDAQ, which is the gray line that you see there. And if we were going to cover the reductions in these indices from March 10th, which is last Friday when SVP was intervened, and followed Monday with a Signature Bank, Dow Jones went down negative 1.2%, S&P negative 0.4%, and the NASDAQ gained 1%. And then on the right-hand side of that particular graph that I'm depicting for you, it's the shares of SVP and of Signature. And notice that they were up to the peak back in 2021. SVP, which is the purple line that you see there, that share went up to about $755. You know what it finished? $70. No equity left there. And the orange line is Signature, which went in its peak $365, and now it was about $106. So what President Biden and the Federal Reserve and FDIC have been doing to cool all these rumors and all these fears of all these depositors was to say, we are guaranteeing you. So, don't run and take all your deposits out of the banks because they are insured. Of course, shareholders, that's a different story. I know that there are going to be a lot of litigation against the senior management of SVP, same thing with Signature, but that is another story and we will find out later on. Then these last two graphs that I'm depicting for you is what's happening in Puerto Rico. And on the left-hand side, you see the shares, the trends in the shares of Banco Popular de Puerto Rico, which is the blue segment that you see there, Oriental Bank, which is the orange line from February of 2020 almost to March 15 of 2023, and First Bank, which is that green line that you see there again for the same period. All three have been losing share value. Banco Popular negative 15.6%, Oriental negative 4.9%, and First Bank negative 9.7%. Is there concern here? Well, if you're a shareholder, before you run to sell these shares, remember that in 2007, 2008, these shares went down more. Even Banco Popular went down almost 50%, and yet this is the biggest bank in Puerto Rico. So before that, just listen to what the news are saying. Be vigilant in terms of this, and don't listen to rumors. Then on the next table that I'm depicting for you is validating what the Commissioner of Financial Institutions in Puerto Rico is saying. The banking system in Puerto Rico is well capitalized. We have assets of $101.3 billion as of third quarter of 2022, which is the latest figures that we have. Loans for $34.3 billion. Deposits, $92.1 billion. These banks are flush with money with all those deposits. Capital, $7.2 billion. And these ratios of loans to deposit, for every dollar of deposits, there are 37 cents in dollars. That means that 63 cents are invested elsewhere, be it in treasuries, be it in what are regulated investments that the FDIC allows the banks to invest in. So there is a lot of cash in terms of these banks, and in terms of capital to assets, not to the capital to the risk-weighted assets, which is another ratio. This is just plain vanilla capital divided into the total assets that we are depicting in this table. That's about 7%. So for every dollar, there are 7 cents in capital. And as I depicted for you, they are flush with liquidity. There are lots of deposits in the banking system in Puerto Rico. So my advice to you is listen to the news. If you have more than $250,000 in any one bank account, be sure to diversify. Take out the excess of those $250,000 and move it to another bank, which are all the banks in Puerto Rico are federally deposit insured up to $250,000. And be sure to diversify your investments. That's always a good advice. Don't put all your eggs in just one basket. Don't forget that this is a service of Puerto Rico Economic Pulse, that if you like our capsules, this is subscribe to the Voice of Heidie Calero in YouTube. Give us a like to capsules such as this one. And don't forget that the economy is all of us. Thank you.